I can't overstate, similar to what you're saying, like the concept of having a stack and like a stack that is yours. Like I actually get mind blown when I hear agencies saying like, oh yeah, we don't care. We don't care what form plugin we use. We don't care what page builder we use. Like you have to have something there, because that is like, when I think business, I know it's a technical question, but when I think business, that is like, that the amount of like complexity that would be unnecessarily added to your whole business model because you're like changing page builders here and there, and you're changing form plugins out here and there, or SEO plugin, or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. Like you need to have some semblance of a process there, because what the process doesn't even need to be perfect. It just needs to be yours.
Welcome to the Web Design Business Podcast with your host, Josh Hall, helping you build a web design business that gives you freedom and a lifestyle you love.
Hello, web designer friends, both younger and older. So good to have you here. Speaking of young and older web designers, that's exactly what we're going to dive into in this episode. We are going to address the elephant in the room question that's going on right now in web design, and that is WordPress basically just for old people? Is it kind of a dated platform that, yes, it's well over 40% of the internet. I think it's nearing or past 44% based off of stats I've seen recently. But there are a lot of other website platforms and builders that are, quite frankly, just a lot easier to get going with. There's a lot of drag and drop platforms like Framer, Squarespace, ShowIt. Even though these are drag and drop like and self-hosted, there are some more robust platforms like WixStudio, WebFlow, and Duda. It does seem like all roads kind of lead to WordPress because it is the most flexible and customizable and open source. But most young web designers, from my perspective, don't get into WordPress first. However, there are exclusions to that. And I'm so excited to bring one of those rare unicorns onto the podcast in this episode. I've got a young whippersnapper web designer here with us today, Mark Szymanski, who did start with WordPress. And in this conversation, very excited to share with you really what led him to WordPress over these other platforms. And we really get into, because he is kind of a thought leader and has a growing YouTube channel as a young WordPresser, we really get into what made this the best choice for him and his agency, but also talking about some of the challenges that WordPress has with the competitors we just mentioned. However, I found this really interesting because we really do get into some of the opportunities for WordPress, but how they can market better to youngsters like Mark and others who are getting into web design, or even if you're not a youngster in age, you may be a youngster in your web design journey. So how can WordPress do this better? A lot of really good topics covered with Mark. And then also, as an agency owner, I really have to commend Mark on kind of hitting the important point of having a lean tool stack. And I really don't want to glance over this because, just heads up, if you start your web design journey and you use all the tools, it is going to get very complex and very confusing very fast. So we're going to get into all that and a lot more in this conversation with Mark Szymanski. You can check him out at his YouTube channel. We will have all of the links and resources mentioned, as well as all the places that you can connect with him over at the show notes at this episode at joshhall.co/349. So head there after this. And important disclaimer and note before we dive in, we recorded this conversation before the recent WordPress drama between WordPress and WP Engine. So I would have loved to have talked about that with Mark, but we may have to do a round two for that one. So this was recorded before that. So if you're hoping to hear thoughts on that, I've already shared my thoughts inside my Web Designer Pro community, but maybe I will eventually here on my YouTube channel or something more public. But that is not a topic that is covered in this one. So, but to be determined. All right, here's Mark. Let's talk about WordPress and whether it's just for old people. Mark, good to see you, man, on the podcast. Yeah. You said before we hit record, that it was an honor for you to come on, but it's an honor for me to have you on, man. I really like what you're up to in the WordPress space in particular. And we were on a recent kind of like I guess it was through Automatic, right? It was like a WordPress YouTubers collective. And I thought some of your insight was really cool about page builders in the industry today. So that's kind of what I wanted to get your insight on today, man.
Yeah, appreciate it, man. Josh, this is when I say it's an honor, it's truly an honor and privilege, man. I've been watching your stuff for a long time. I know you're one of the OGs in the space here. So, and kudos for so many podcast episodes. I know you said that before we went on. It's unbelievable. So thank you so much, man. And yeah, I think that was Ann McCarthy put that on, and there's subsequent meetings to follow too, but like kind of just an idea of an initiative to get YouTubers together specifically, because I mean, we're all talking now about all these different topics, and there's a lot of things kind of like going on, and a lot of different opinions and perspectives from, whether it's agency life, product life, or whatever. And I'm happy that it seems like coming from more of the core of WordPress and Automatic, we're opening more channels of dialogue and everything. Cause I think everybody wins if we just continue to talk like that. So super excited.
You hit on what is both the strength and the problem with WordPress is that there is just like these segmented pockets of WordPress, right? I mean, I think that's what has caused a lot of confusion for folks who are either getting into WordPress or if they're expanding their tool stack right now. Yeah,
it's definitely something to navigate. I mean, I started the YouTube channel and started like really diving into it much more like 8 to 12 months ago, I guess, at this point, and just kind of getting more involved in the WordPress community, because I had been building websites since like 2018, and following guys like yourself, coming up, trying to understand like different, evolving my stack, evolving my skills and everything. And I look at it now, I look back to where I was at, look at how much the landscape has changed, how many more options there are now. And then I think of like, just if I was coming into it now, or if I was trying to get like involved, like where to even start. And it's difficult because there is just too many options inside WordPress, and then also outside of it, kind of creating this little external pressure thing of like, oh, should I use WordPress? Is it like not cool anymore? Because I mean, all these questions are in my mind, like extremely like needed to be asked. And it's, us in here that we kind of like know it a little bit more, and we're in it every day. There's a valuable perspective there, I feel like. So I think we all just want to keep moving it forward too.
Let's just be completely honest about this, Mark. Do you feel like WordPress is like the older generation's tool? Like, I just don't know any young folk who are getting into WordPress. It's WebFlow well, it's mostly Framer, a few others, but it's mostly WebFlow.
Yeah. So I have a pretty I don't know, a specific opinion about this. Like, I mean, I'm 28 years old right now. So I started in this when I was like, 22-ish or something like that. Like, I found WordPress. So I feel, again, from my personal experience, that I'm one of the youngest people that I talk to in this space of WordPress specifically, which isn't necessarily like a bad thing. I'm not saying like old press is like, or WordPress is like, I say old press. I'm not saying WordPress is like old necessarily. It's being old and a mature product is awesome. Yeah. Like, I mean, that's sick. And that's something to be sought after. That said though, I do feel like when you're the first one to innovate, what happens is like you go so far, and now like everybody else like saw everything good that you did and bad that you did. I'm not speaking about specifics necessarily. We could get into that, but it doesn't matter. It's whatever. It's not just specific to WordPress. They see all the good, they see all the bad, and they just take all the good. You know what I mean? And they don't make the same mistakes that you made trying to come up and do all those different things. There's not as much legacy situation that they have to deal with and everything like that. So I feel like those tools like Framer, WebFlow, XYZ or whatever are kind of benefiting a lot from that. And even though they're not really taking away numbers wise, seemingly like that heavily from WordPress, it is still like, I just feel like even though WordPress isn't really a product, you definitely still want it to continue to grow and evolve and everything like that. And it's important to kind of like, I feel like, look at other tools and just see like, hey, what are they doing? What's good? What's bad there? Kind of just do a little reverse of what we just talked about there. And specifically at being old, I think that there is from what I've seen, a lot of people that I've talked to in this space, it's kind of felt like they saw it grow up. They grew up with it in a sense. They were like, oh, this is awesome. And they've been here maybe for the whole 20 or so years or whatever. And it's like, there's like almost like an emotional connection to it, which is cool that you have that to a tool. But at the same time, it just creates like a different type of vibe like with it. And it can be good and bad. I mean, like everybody wants to see it succeed, but at the same time, I've used the term rose-colored glasses before. We can't just like think that it's the best just because it's our favorite and we've used it for a long time. We have to constantly be willing to, hopefully continue to let it evolve, be honest about the things that we think the critiques that we have. And I love having those conversations with people, and there's people that have like really good like perspectives on it. And I think that that's how you continue to make it evolve and continue to grow.
Your point about the issues and challenges with being the first like innovator, Divi, which is still my preferred theme of choice, that's like the case study of that. That's the prime example, because Divi was so revolutionary, quite honestly, at the time in 2013 and 14 that everyone started using it. But now it's like the fading older sister type of analogy. Like everyone's like, oh, it's slow, it's old, it's dated. I know you're a Bricks guy, which is like hot on the WordPress market right now. So Divi's like, ground
Divi 5
zero.
though. Divi 5 though. But I mean, that's exactly it though. It's like, I've seen, I know the Divi chat, right? Like just wrapped up. I know you were on there for a little bit on the finale and everything like that. Like that I've never personally used Divi. I've seen it in action, maybe tinkered with it once or twice, but like I was an Elementor guy, and it's the same exact thing. Like Divi, I think, was first to the party, so to speak, in that realm. But you can't, like, you can critique certainly Divi, Builder, Elementor, whatever, but they're kind of like, in my mind, like kind of the first gen of page builders. Incredible. Like you have to respect that. That was so incredible what they did. They changed the whole landscape. I came into WordPress and I was like fumbling around with like themes, and like I didn't really come from a strict dev background. Like I was like, am I gonna have to just like put this stuff like where this picture goes? Like I can't move anything. I can't use like a blank canvas or whatever. I found Elementor. I was the one that was just happened to be the one that I found literally in the repo, and I was like, wow, this is way better experience. I can actually design, kind of move things around, do whatever, and just totally changed the game there. And now you have, again, like it's the same thing within WordPress. It's like the Brickses, those types of builders, like they're able to just see what the other ones stumbled on just because they were innovating. And now they're able to, do different things. And Divi, huge kudos to them that, I mean, it seems like they're rewriting everything, or they're changing the whole game here with Divi 5. So hopefully we can continue to move forward. If you want, man, after this, I could send you the latest Divi 5. I have the full theme. Like I'm in a beta group and I'm seeing what they're doing. It's the same in the way of like the elements as far as how you build, but the visual builder itself is completely different. It looks a lot like and functions a lot like Bricks and some of the others with just the way it is. Not like an on-page element builder, but it is like a panel builder to where you have all of your elements on the left, you have the canvas in the middle, and then you have your modules on the right. That's kind of how it functions now. It is a complete rewrite. It is, that's the thing about software development, specifically for page builders for WordPress. It's like, for Elegant Themes who own Divi, you get to this point where a decade after you were like the hottest thing ever for websites, especially for WordPress, now you're suddenly the old dog and you need to like rewrite things and completely evolve. So look, I feel for companies in that situation. I know Divi takes a lot of heat in a lot of the Facebook groups I'm in, but I've always stuck with them because I trust Elegant Themes, and Divi is what I built my 6-figure web design business on. And yeah, it's clunky and slow in a lot of regards, but I held out over the past couple of years because I knew at some point we were going to come to this point where it's a rewrite. It's very, very different. Divi 5 is freaking slick and very fast, like crazy fast, awesome, editor wise. So anyway, I can give you if you want to check it out, I'd be curious. Definitely take a look. Yeah. Appreciate it. But that's what has to happen. And I do feel like we're going to see this new marketing cycle and sales cycle for when Divi 5 is launched and they get some of the bugs out in the first few versions. I think I'm curious to see how that's going to start to almost now compete back up and catch back up with Breakdance, Bricks, and some of the other ones who are a lot more snappy and fast compared to Divi right now. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. And like I said, I think that I just said this in my live stream earlier today, like no matter if it's a plugin specifically or like a page builder or whatever, I think more things competing is always generally better because it's like going to push everything to be better. So I'm happy to see like, Divi rewriting. I know Elementor's made like a ton of, performance improvements and all that sort of stuff recently. I just think that that's kind of the natural evolution of everything. We're just in that weird spot right now where I kind of feel like we're in like Gen 2, so to speak. And there's a lot of things that are kind of re-innovating on what was first innovated. And it's an exciting time.
It is. It's so funny, man. You're making me realize my age now because I'm 37. And it's funny, in the beginning, you said I was like an OG YouTuber. I thought when I started my YouTube channel in 2017 that I was so far behind. I was like, I could never be some of the other YouTubers that I've watched for the past few years. It does just go to show you how fast this industry moves and evolves. I mean, when I got into web design, it was 2010. And I was coming from Dreamweaver, and WordPress was being talked about like some other platforms are now. There was like rumblings. They were like, actually, you could build like whole sites with WordPress. And I was like, isn't that just for blogs? But they're like, no, it's going to be huge. I remember one guy, I was just at like a party. We were playing beer pong, and I just heard him talking about WordPress, and I was like, oh, that's cool. And he was just like, dude. He was like just total frat guy. He's like, dude, you got to check out WordPress, man. He's like, it's going to be huge.
That's amazing.
It's going to be huge, dude. And I was like, whatever. He's probably drunk and he doesn't remember this. He was right. That dude was absolutely right. Yeah.
Oh my God. The frat guy. That is an incredible story that you just heard about WordPress from a frat guy.
That was the first. Yeah. That was literally, no, you're right. That was literally the first time that I had heard about it. Like, I think I had seen it, but I never had anybody in my realm at that point because I wasn't in any communities. I never heard anyone talk about WordPress until him. So
that is genuinely one of the best WordPress origin stories I've ever heard.
Yeah, I'm so glad we got that on the podcast because I think that was locked in the memory banks. I kind of forgot, but yeah, that's absolutely when I heard about it.
Unbelievable! What a time! What a time!
And it's very different. It's just funny. And now it's like it's not even that long ago. It's 14 years, but that is like 75 years in webland, so much has changed in the last decade. So I agree. I think we're in like a fresh new world when it comes to website builders in general. I mean, the reality is WixStudio, WebFlow, ShowIt, some of these other platforms are gaining in popularity, but WordPress is still the core for 44% of the internet. Like still
I've heard that number. Yeah.
A crazy large amount of websites are still using WordPress, billions of websites. So I think we're safe for a while, but they definitely need to innovate to make sure, I think that the numbers don't drop too bad.
I think, I just think that, we just continue to be like very honest with the situation. Like, I mean, like the fact that there are other options, and like, there's a lot of really interesting projects going on too. Cause I mean, part of this I've tried to I've realized there's like a make Slack, channel and everything like that, where you can, that's amazing. You can't do that with Wix. You can't do that with Squarespace. Like you can go in there and you can see like on launch day, how everything's going on. You can see like what people are doing contributor wise and everything like that. One of the things is like, one of the projects is data liberation. I know that's like a really interesting thing where we can kind of go from the concept, not built yet, but the concept would be to go from like a Wix to a WordPress, or a WordPress to a Wix, or even like from an Elementor to a Divi or something like that. So I love the concept of open source. I love the concept of the WordPress project. And I just think that we always need to have, it's interesting because like there's a lot of creators now that are seeing these things. They have the perspectives because they've been very successful on the platform, but they see where the hiccups can be. They see where the blind spots potentially are. They look at the other tooling because they have time to create content, or like take a look at like a WixStudio or a SquareSpace or whatever, or WebFlow. And then there's also creators that are directly on those platforms. So you look at all that stuff and you're like, hey, these guys are doing something that's like way different and way potentially a lot better than WordPress does, either in core or this plugin and that plugin. It's like, we just want it to continue to be better. And this is our perspective on how to make it better. And it's, I just feel like there's a lot of conversations that are sometimes met with pushback there, but really, I think, I don't know of anybody that's like critiquing WordPress in a way where they don't want it to get better. You know what I mean? Like, it's just everybody, I feel like you're using it every day. Like your businesses rely on it. It's like, we don't want it to be worse. We want it to be better. And we're just kind of voicing our things there. And then we could go into like how you actually contribute, a little bit of kind of what we're doing now with like the YouTuber kind of like program there and everything like that, getting closer to, people that actually maybe have influence on the actual project and things, because that's a whole nother like rabbit hole you can kind of go into with how WordPress works. But I'm just a curious person. So I just love learning all of this and kind of like getting the nuts and bolts of everything, how it all goes and how we can make it better. When
you got into web design, were you tempted by other platforms and builders? What made you choose WordPress?
Yeah. So my origin story is actually I was working for like a real estate agency, but I was working in a room with like two software developers effectively. And I was like the marketing tech guy. I came out of college with like an information sciences degree. So it was like tech and business ish. So then I was working at this real estate agency, and the guys were literally coding like the web site and the whole web platform in like ASP.NET. So they're sitting over there in like, Azure land and whatever, and like, VS Code or whatever at the time. And I'm like, at one point I actually did try to do it like that. I was like, I can't do, like, I'm not going to sit here and code this stuff all day. Like, there's no way that I just want to build a website. And to build a website, I knew there was better ways. So then I think they turned me on to WordPress or something. They were like, hey, why don't you use WordPress? And I was like, oh, let me check it out. So then after I deleted those files that I started with that ASP.NET situation, I came over to WordPress. I found the themes, and I probably used like one of the just straight up themes out of the repository, because again, that's another huge topic. Like, how do you even start in WordPress? You know what I mean? Like, there's no onboarding, which it's nuanced, but how do you go about it if you're brand new, if you're completely green to it? There's a ton of great content now, way more than there was then. There's still a lot then, but I probably like literally watched one of your videos. I can't even remember. And I just saw that like, hey, this is what WordPress is effectively. This is how you get started. And then once I found out that you didn't have to just straight up have a theme because it was the beginning of the page builder era, I was like, wow, this is pretty cool. So then I went that route. But did I ever try anything else? I tried WebFlow a little bit throughout there somewhere, but I was already in the WordPress ecosystem. And I do feel like WordPress is the end game, so to speak, for a lot of people. I feel like once you go WordPress, you kind of can't go back, so to speak, because of what it is, like the open source nature of it, the data liberation, so to speak, side of where you can have like everything, you own your data. It is the most versatile, obviously. Like it's just a lot of those types of things. And but I think the thing though, the point that you bring up there is like, if somebody doesn't start with WordPress, I'm going to contradict myself slightly. If you start with WordPress, you might be overwhelmed, but I do think it's ultimately the end game. I think if you leave, you'd probably end up coming back if you were too early. But my point is that if you start with a WebFlow or something, you might not leave it. You know what I mean? Because like you might build like a ton of websites on there. You might be really familiar with it and everything like that. And you might never, there's this real thing that we don't bring up enough where it's like, we only have so much time to like look at our options. So if you go into a Webflow land and you're really comfortable with it, at some point you're going to be like, I can't move to WordPress because I already know Webflow so much, just as an example. I do feel like there's an aspect of it to that. Long-winded way to say that I've never really used too much else, but that's what I've seen and experienced kind of like indirectly.
No, that's a good point. There is a window, especially if you are pretty quick to start getting clients. It's like, if I'm going to build my business, I want to make sure in this short window, whether it's a few weeks or a month or 3 months, that I choose a tool that's going to suit me and my clients, and I like the community. So I don't want to overwhelm folks with pressure to choose the right tool, but it is true. Like you're very unlikely to start getting clients and build on WordPress and then just overnight switch over to WixStudio or something. That's a tricky thing. I almost think and I almost wonder if a lot of platforms are going to try to go towards influencers and folks who are teaching people how to start in web design to make sure they get them before they start using a different tool, basically.
That is a really good point. And that's like, to like kind of like tie it together. Like it's one of the reasons that like I've always appreciated like your content, especially as you've, I know you still do like tutorials and everything, but like the stuff that you talk about and the community that you've built is extremely like practical. Like obviously technical information, technical tutorials are important as well. But like if you want to build a business, there's this concept that I've thought about and I've stirred around in my head, just kind of like doing some self-awareness stuff and introspection. Like, did you have a skill, like anyone, did you in general have a skill and then start taking money for that skill? Or did you want to build a business and then you like developed the skill, or more so like found people that had that skill? And that's a very like big distinction in our industry, because I feel like what happens a lot is people like the progression is, oh, I can build a website because there's all these tools out here or whatever they want, or WordPress or whatever. I know how to use this. I know how to build websites. So then I'm going to make a business for myself out of being the technician. But like really the next step is like, how do you remove yourself from it? How do you like scale? How do you delegate and do all that? And I feel like that is a big piece that is, you know, and you're living proof of that. Like there's a lot of people like looking for that type of information, how to like either scale their businesses or how to make it more sustainable, build those processes in there. That's just like a whole secondary conversation that not a lot of people have a ton of the time, because a lot of it does get, there's too, like you can almost get caught in the minutia of the technical side of things. And I love them both, but you know what I mean? Like they have to kind of like yin and yang to a certain degree. Because if you don't, then you're either going to be really technical and have a bad business, or you're going to be really business savvy and your products, your actual deliverable is going to suck. So it's like, it's a weird thing.
Spot on with that statement, Mark. You're exactly right. And the reality is web designers, when you become a freelancer and eventually start your business, which by the way, anyone who gets paid for even one website, you got a business now. You are really straddling both worlds as a creative and a business owner. And I think most, in my case and in my experience, most web designers are like myself, and we just kind of fumbled into it. And we just kind of accidentally started getting into web design. And the next thing you know, you got people wanting more websites, you get referred, and you got a business. So you're totally right. That becomes kind of the next step, is once people are making money with websites, you want to continue to refine the craft and then build the business side of things. But with this idea of the page builder and the tools that are right for you, I can't like understate or overstate how important this decision is, because if you have 50 clients using Divi, you're going to be very, very slow to want to pull your clients from Divi and then move to, especially if it's even outside of WordPress, you know, like that is a big decision. So, for all those reasons, I think that's honestly one reason why Divi has continued to own a huge share of the page builder market, is because there are just so many agencies that have built up over the last decade, and Divi is the website builder. So it is a huge deal to move 50 or 100 clients from Divi to Elementor, for example.
100%. It's almost insurmountable in some cases. I mean, like you build it, and then like you'd have to sell them on a full rebuild, you know, in a different platform. You'd have to try to justify that. It's tough. I mean, because I've tried to do it, like, you know, going from Elementor to Bricks, and it's a tough spot. You almost have to like, I'm not speaking from personal experience, I'm just speaking from like theory here. You would almost have to like bring somebody on in a way that knew, like if you lived in Divi world and you wanted to move to like Elementor, you'd almost have to bring somebody on and almost create like a small team of like your Elementor team. And then they would service the new Elementor sites, and then your legacy team would service the Divi sites. That's the only, because if you're small, if you're only like one person, it is very difficult. Like I can't overstate, similar to what you're saying, like the concept of having a stack. And like a stack that is yours. Like I actually get mind blown when I hear agencies saying like, oh yeah, we don't care. We don't care what form plugin we use. We don't care what page builder we use. Like you have to have something there, because that is like, when I think business, I know it's a technical question, but when I think business, that is like, that the amount of like complexity that would be unnecessarily added to your whole business model, because you're like changing page builders here and there, and you're changing form plugins out here and there, or SEO plugin, or whatever it is. Like you need to have some semblance of a process there, because what the process doesn't even need to be perfect. It just needs to be yours. And then when you have that process, at least you're moving in like a consistent and cohesive fashion, and you can always tweak it. But the point is like, you need to always have your base there. You need to always have your blueprint site, right? That you can just, at a moment's notice, you can clone, and you're already like kind of set up. And yeah, it's just a weird, it's tough. It's tough to change. And you obviously you don't want to do it that much. Sometimes you do have to. I mean, we've had, you know, page builders like cease to exist. Right. And it's unfortunate, but yeah, I feel like if there's ever a time where you need to move, you would almost have to like really separate concerns to some degree, because I don't know how I would manage like 3-4 different page builder environments. And that's the reason that I always try to like take ownership of the projects more so than just be like, oh yeah, we'll just fix your website. Like, I don't know what I'm doing in Divi. Like, I don't want to like, I know what I could probably figure it out, but like, I don't want to mess this up for you more than it is. I don't want to do whatever. So I don't know. There's just it's a lot. There's a lot there in WordPress.
It's very hard for a solopreneur as a one man, one woman shop to keep up with more than one builder. And from what I've seen to some of the members of my community, Web Designer Pro, those who do tend to use a few different builders or maybe even a couple platforms, they're generally connected with contractors who know those pretty well. Just like you said, you may have like a Divi legacy team or an Elementor team. Like you may have somebody who knows this tool pretty well and this one, or a developer who happens to luckily, know a few, but that is really hard to stay sustainable and profitable. So definitely something to consider for everyone early on. Like beware of having a huge tool stack because it's a nightmare to keep up with. It's also a nightmare to scale with. When you're ready to hire, if you are somebody who's like, okay, I'm ready to get help, I want to focus on the business and sales, and I want to bring on a junior developer, and you're like, by the way, we use WordPress, but you need to know Divi, Elementor, Bricks, Breakdance, and like 3 other themes. It's like, well, good luck, or unless you have like 10 different contractors.
Exactly. Compare that to like if you wanted to scale, like you said, to a junior developer, and you said we use Bricks, we use ACSS. Like you're just naming your stack. You're not, and it's all like one plugin in each kind of like discipline of a website, like one area. So you're naming your form plugin, your page builder, your framework, whatever. And I feel like honestly, that's just a better job description. It's a tighter job description you can actually see. And then if they don't know something, obviously they just need to learn one thing of that area of a website, and then they can kind of go from there. And yeah, it's a tough spot because then it all kind of goes into the whole conversation or the area of, well, how do I get more clients, or how do I like build my business more? I mean, you maybe talk about like the actual niching part of it down to like a specific, specific industry. And I just feel like there's a saying like good business is boring business or something like that. And I think of boring as in like, it's kind of standardized, it's kind of process driven and a lot of that. And the more you can kind of like start to refine that, I just think you're going to be better off like as you're moving. Because like I said, I've seen and talked to some people that are just like, we just do everything. Like we do anything with everything. And it's like, if that's working for you, all right. But I feel like it could be working better.
Well, yeah.
Less stressful.
Talk to them in 6 months. Like, do they have any hair left? How is that even possible? What are your metrics for choosing a tool? Do you have like, I kind of have, my rule of thumb, but I would love to hear from your perspective, Mark, like when it comes to somebody choosing a tool, or even right now, have you, like we were talking about Clean Talk being a anti-spam plugin. If you decide to look at anti-spam options, what's your metrics for choosing a tool and sticking with it?
Yeah. So for something like that, I've heard of Clean Talk, but like specifically with that, it just like doesn't it's a kind of like is it similar to like a reCAPTCHA though?
Well, I should say that's kind of a low stake tool. So like you could have, 10 different anti-spam plugins, but when it comes to like choosing a theme or a page builder that all of your websites are going to be on, or like I'm wearing a Gravity Form shirt right now. If you choose a form builder, that's a pretty big deal because all of your forms on all of your websites that you know how to make sure the email gets delivered. Like that's probably, if I could rank the decisions, it would be like first level is the platform. Are you choosing WebFlow, WordPress, WixStudio, whatever? Next would be the page builder. What page builder, what block editor are you going to use? And then it would be the primary plugins like Gravity Forms, like a few others that are like, standard on every website. So yeah, I'm just kind of curious, especially those big ones, those important ones. How do you help decide what to choose?
Yeah, it would make a really good video, like a specific like mindset as far as how to do everything, like a process for it. I can give you kind of like anecdotally, like how I've made very recent decisions in those specific ones. So obviously WordPress, you kind of know the story there, like we said earlier, but like ultimately, if I was thinking about it right now, I would just be like, okay, well, does this platform like keep my data? Like, can I move easily if I need something? Like is there any support? What's the community like? How do features continue to get like, it's literally hard to answer this question, the platform one, because like when you're in WordPress, like I said, I really do feel like it's the end game. Like I've never once really thought about moving anywhere else, knowing what I know now. But if you were just getting into it, it would be a little bit more abstract because you don't understand the benefits of like it being so versatile and it being open source and you being able to like host anywhere and like make your hosting faster or, slower with like a shared hosting. So like you don't have any of that control at like a WebFlow. So I think that's maybe like one. The platform one is, we talk about that one a lot. I feel like it's harder to answer from within. And I haven't made that decision, obviously made that decision a long time ago. very recent decision though that I made was moving from like Elementor primarily to a Bricks. And that one came in multiple ways. Like I talked about this on my stream earlier today, like early in my career, I had a situation where I couldn't make like a custom loop element. So I like had to find like a third party thing to do that. Elementor now has that, but I couldn't do that at first. Then I had a situation where like I couldn't do nested loops. So like a query within a query, so to speak. And then I got like Crocoblock, Jet Engine, that suite of plugins, because that allowed me to bolt on that functionality to Elementor. And then even more recently, I had like a website that had like LearnDash, WooCommerce, Buddy Boss, like all sorts of stuff on it, and built with Elementor. And I'm like, okay, now we're getting to the point where this is almost like a web app. There's a lot of software in here that is it's bogging it down, not because of anything independently, but there's a lot going on. Is there a way for me to kind of streamline this a little bit more, maybe cleaner code, XYZ, whatever in the future? And then I started looking into things, and I found Breakdance, I found Bricks. And I think at the time, maybe I was looking at like Oxygen as well or whatever. And I ended up going with Bricks. So the metric to find that it was a little bit of feel, but it was also more just like when I stepped into the Bricks environment, I felt way closer. I know HTML, CSS, I knew Java like in college, but I'm not like a developer, but it made me feel more like closer to the code, so to speak, because I could understand it. And I was more like, I just like more logical in that way rather than just like dropping elements in. Like I like the idea that when I throw in a section, that's what's going to get rendered on the back end, even though I'm not typing in it. I literally feel like it's a way to create HTML with a GUI, with like a GUI in a sense. So that's been great. And that was one of the metrics that kind of moved me that way. Plus there was a growing community. It is and was popular obviously at the time as well. And then there's a lot of like tools like ACSS and frames that kind of like put together, like really make a nice piece there. So I would say in the page builder realm, like you could look at like maybe Kevin Geary or somebody else, like give you like specific reasons why they're like picking page builders. But like that for me was some of the main pieces. The Forms plugin, if we just hit on that real quick, is a similar vibe to that, but it was like, what can I do? What can't I do? And I think with Forms, it's with other things too, but specifically with Forms, like you never know what somebody is going to ask you to do with a form. Like it could be a simple contact form, or it could be like, hey, can we like add things to like a WooCommerce product where they can like put they can pick like a shirt color and they can do all this like extra stuff and all this stuff. I actually use WS Form now. That's what I ended up on. And I used it in a project and I didn't even know about it at the time. And I used it and it was like, it was so good, like on one random client project. And then I was like, I found it again recently and I was like, this thing is just so powerful. And again, I haven't used Gravity Forms extensively. I haven't used Ninja Forms. I know it was a big one. Like I haven't used every single one, but like when I found something, this goes back to what I was saying earlier. I am somebody that could probably look at more tools, but a lot of agency owners cannot. So they rely on guys like us to like give a little bit of the perspective, and then maybe they can watch like 5 videos on 5 different builders or builders or forms or whatever, and then go from there. But the tough part is there's just no real like answer. You know what I mean? All these plugins and products have a lot of pros. Maybe they have some cons, but a lot of it is like super personal to like what your business is. So I know that was a lot there.
No, that's a good point. Gravity Forms, you mentioned that they're kind of like the Divi of form builders, which they've still come a long way and continue to innovate. But I think like with WS Form, they're probably very similar to Bricks and others where they kind of see what are the most important things and they're able to cut out the fluff and the legacy problems that like Gravity Forms can't just blow up the plugin and start new necessarily. So again, that's the hidden line item for anyone who wants to be in the SaaS world. If you're going to build some software, you just have to know it's going to continue to get bloated and more complex. And eventually you're just going to have to either innovate continuously or like completely change things up or do something to stay fresh and to stay relevant, I guess.
Yeah, that's tough. You definitely need to kind of have that foresight in there, and there's no easy way around that. I don't think you either need to like constantly be refactoring, which is probably not the way to go, or like just kind of plan for that like at some point you're going to need almost like do kind of like a feature freeze, so to speak, and like and then kind of redo some stuff. The other thing that just came to mind is obviously you want to consider the maturity of the product. If we're actually talking like specific metrics, you want to consider the maturity of the product. And the other big thing that I don't necessarily, it is important, but it's like, it's definitely abstract, is like the team behind it, the company behind it, because generally this community, like there's so many good people, you want to work with good people, right? And most if not everyone is good, but like the plugin situation is very interesting, and there's no one way that people are doing it. Sometimes people will have like a Facebook group for support. Sometimes you'll just get like email. Sometimes maybe you'll get like a live chat or whatever. So all of those things, that's where it's almost like preferential in a way, like what your preferences are to dealing with that. Like if you hate Discord and there are support communities in Discord, like you might not want to use that. You know what I mean? Like it's like, I don't, there's no way for me to tell you what you should use in that case, because like you literally might have a terrible time. And then the other thing is like, just the level of support, whether it's paid or not. I honestly rarely use support a lot of times unless there's something that I have pretty much exhausted all of my options. And I'm like, I really don't think I can do this. Can you confirm that I can't do this? And then if I can't do this, can you maybe like add it? You know what I mean? So I've had that happen.
I'm of the mindset. I have a conspiracy theory for WordPress, which is that WordPress and page builders got in with Facebook to create Facebook groups to avoid support forums for websites. that is my theory.
I hope we uncover the truth to that at some point.
Who would ever talk to theme support directly this day and age without going to a Facebook group or a community first? Like it's very, very, very rare that you're going to. Same thing with
asterisk. Asterisk, like go to the Facebook community and use the search instead of the post first. That too, because like there's probably, that's the thing is like. It's a weird situation. Like I'm in so many WordPress Facebook groups now because like all different products or groups or whatever. And it's like, yeah, a lot of times you'll get those repeating questions, which is, I understand it. But at the same time, it's like, it's not really the best. It's a group. It wasn't really, I don't know if it was really designed for like to be like the support thing, but yeah, you always have to like, just a note to anybody in any of those groups, like always search. Cause if you probably find somebody else that has asked the same question. And, but yeah, I mean, the level of those groups like definitely does vary. Cause like, you'll get like an Elementor group where it's like, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of people in there. And there's a lot of different conversations going on and things like that. And then you'll get like a WS forum group where it's like smaller, more intimate. The level of, team owner support, like direct support through those things can vary. But yeah, there's just, those are things to consider. Unfortunately, you're kind of in the weeds at that point when you're considering those things. So, and again, you're always like, if you're an agency owner and you're still doing the work, you're always like watching the clock. Like, how long am I dealing with XYZ before I get back to John Doe over here, the client, and I need to build their website? But again, I will counteract that. This is where the process, like every single time you do something, you should probably be like documenting, like, this is how I did this. And then, kind of continue to go from there with like building that out. And so just so you're not wasting as much time. Cause I mean, so much is repeatable, it's like,
you're in the influencer world now. Welcome, Mark. Yeah. I feel like if I was getting started in web design today, I think a big emphasis for me would be to find the personality types that I resonate with. And I would probably just choose the tools they use. Like a lot of my community members have said that they found me and they're like, honestly, there's so many options. Just tell me what to use. And unless I find something that I absolutely want to do, I'm just going to trust you and use what you use. So to that end, like you mentioned, Kevin with Kevin Geary's stuff. I'm a big fan of Dave Foy too. He's a Bricks guy. And there's a bunch of other folks who are Divi folks, Elementor folks. Like I kind of feel like influencers have so much say and leverage now with these tools because people are going to start to, when it comes to finding the community, they're going to kind of gravitate towards the tribe. Like your vibe attracts your tribe. So they're going to gravitate towards people who are using a tool that they like. And if they learn from them, they're gonna be like, okay, yeah, I'll stick with Divi if that's what Josh uses, or Bricks if that's what Mark uses. So how do you feel about that with the role of, now that we're both influencers, how do you feel about the pressure? How do you feel about the weight of that on your shoulders, Mark?
Yeah, it's an interesting spot. I love talking about it. The origin for me specifically, and I know a lot of other people have came to this. I didn't like come up with this. I actually observed it and I just did it. is that in a world, I've said this line many times, but like in a world that's becoming like more artificial and more kind of like bland in certain ways, and like there's just so much noise, you have to really be like as authentic as possible. And the only way that I know how to be authentic is to literally be myself. And by extension, that means like literally use my name, so to speak, for the brand of my influencing, right? If we want to call it that, right? Like personal branding. I just love that. You don't have to think of a name that you're going to regret. Like it's your name, you have it, just as long as you keep your integrity high and you're always authentic, then it's one of the best ways to go. I was considering like doing like a brand name for some of my stuff, like that when I was starting more WordPress style YouTube, like coming up with XYZ, whatever or something. And I didn't think that was the way to go because I saw other people that were just transitioning, just like, hey, I'm Mark. This is what I use. This is what I do. And, just come here, chat, hang out on live streams, whatever. And if it resonates with you, great. If it doesn't, then no problem. And I think what you have to do is you have to have like the expectation that like one of my mottos is just learn, try, and share everything I do. So I'm learning and then I'm going to go play around with some stuff, see what works, see what doesn't. And then I'm just going to share the results. Like I'm not trying to tell you, like when I say that like I use bricks or I use WS4, I'm not trying to tell you that you have to use it. I don't want to try to like sell you on it necessarily. I am literally just saying that like I use it. It works for me. I have not tried everything else. If you want to give it a shot, okay. If you want to use the affiliate code, okay. If you don't want to use it, don't use it. You know what I mean? And that has worked for me to keep like the pressure off, so to speak, or anything like that, because I don't feel like with great power, so to speak, comes with great responsibility. But like, I don't feel like I'm like trying to like mislead anybody or do anything like that. I'm literally just like an incredibly curious person. And I like to try these different tools, see, and kind of like in my mind, like, okay, I've used 3 other page builders or whatever. Like, how does this one rank up to it? Like what's like the pros and cons? I did this recently on live streams with like e-commerce plugins, right? So everybody knows about WooCommerce. Some people have used SureCart. Some people have used NorthCommerce. I did 2 live streams where I was talking about, I went through a SureCart experience. I went through a NorthCommerce experience, and they're nothing like super crazy special. I'm just playing around and I'm actively talking about like, if I try to do this that I've done in WooCommerce, because I'm pretty like, that's the one that I've used the most. Can I do this? Can I not do this? And it's just like I feel like it's a very genuine and authentic way to just see like, really honestly could save people time from like going and doing all of it and like playing around with themselves. It's like, oh, I would have never thought like you can't do XYZ in here, or you can do here and you can't do it there. And that's the way that I approach it. I don't know if it's the best approach or not, but I feel like it's always for me just trying to be as authentic and not like, shill out anything or whatever, or like lose my integrity. Cause I mean, again, like that's kind of the way that I think about it. So I hope that comes through with the content. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. And the reality is with tools, there's not a right or wrong tool. There's just like maybe a better or worse tool depending on the need. Speaking of, Elementor is not sponsoring this podcast, so we can talk about this freely. We barely ever do any sort of sponsorship. So like, look, the reality is there has been a mass migration from Elementor over the last year in particular. I've seen this like in droves. Even I just mentioned Dave Foy, who's one of the lead creators for Bricks now. He has a Bricks course, and he went from Elementor to Divi. So did you. So let's start with Elementor. And I don't want this to be Elementor bash fest, because I know some people with Elementor and they're awesome. Like it's just one of those tools similar to Divi that was an early to the market thing, but now it has seen a lot of people drift towards different builders. What was it about Elementor that made you feel like you just couldn't stick with them? Like you couldn't wait it out till they innovate?
Yeah. I mean, I think from my personal experiences, like I was saying earlier, where like I got to a point where I was trying to build complex websites. And I have to preface this with the context of like, when I came in, I didn't want to be the template website guy. I didn't want to be the one that just churns and burns like $1,000 websites or anything. Cause I'm very curious. I like to do e-commerce stuff. I like to do group membership. When I found out you could do that in WordPress, I was like, this is amazing. So when I started doing that with Elementor, and like I said, there was probably other reasons too, but it wasn't like I was trying to do it all on shared hosting. Like I had limited a lot of the other variables. So when I was trying like on solid cloud hosting to do like LearnDash and all these other things, like an e-commerce full setup and everything like that. And it was Elementor at the core of it. And I was just trying to extend so much from the page builder thing and then layering on those other features. It just literally got like, there was a time where I'm not blaming this specifically on Elementor, but with the the combination of tools I had there, it was just rough. Like even on pages that didn't have all of that stuff going on and things like that. So I would just say that looking at that, and then you bust into the code, inspect element, you look at the code there and you're like, there's a lot of stuff going on here that it doesn't look like I would have like wrote this. Obviously I can't necessarily write it per se as well as like an actual dev could, but like I'm looking at like, you get these terms like divception where there's a ton, you put one thing in and there's a ton of things in it. I totally understand how that happened. They innovated to make that happen. But now when there's other alternatives that don't do that, and you can drop in like a section, a container, and a heading, and that's all you get, 3 lines, rather than, all these things, the bigger you get, the more problematic that becomes. Because instead of having 3 items, maybe if you have 3 items on a page or 3 elements on a page, maybe you have like 9, if that's the case, right? With the div situation. But if you are building big websites with a lot of custom stuff and a lot of like querying going on, all that sort of stuff, then I feel like you're just going to continue. That's going to continue to get more and more. Like it's not going to go linear. It's going to kind of go like I don't know, logarithmic or whatever. Like it's order of magnitudes. Just what I saw. That was my personal experience. So I didn't know what was next. Also, you're taking me back to my Elementor days. There was literally a period of time where I felt for a year to 2 years, Elementor like just did not do much. Like there was I don't know the exact time frame. I want to say it was maybe like 21 to 23 or 20 to 22 or whatever. I just didn't feel like I heard much from Elementor. I didn't feel like there was a lot of new stuff coming out. I knew there was a lot of features and things that like I was interested in and other people were interested in. And I just felt like they went through a little bit of a lull there. Now they've since came back, which is great. But that was by the time where I was like already like, I was having these issues and I didn't really know where we're going from there. So I don't know. I mean, that's just my personal like flow through that. But I think those were some of the big things that I was like, you know what? And honestly, I'm not gonna lie, it was probably a perfect storm too, with like Bricks and other ones being on the come up, me finding guys like Kevin Geary, Dave Foy, and just looking at these new things. And like, when you're in Elementor land and you hear somebody that has moved from Elementor to Bricks, you're like, well, this guy knows exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah. So like, let me at least hear him out. You know what I mean? And then if it makes sense, then okay, then I'll consider it. And I just had a lot of those experiences. And then even moving forward, fast forwarding now, they have seemingly cleaned up a lot of that stuff and it's still a great product, but there's pieces to it now where like, with the AI boom over the last 12 months or whatever, I see a lot of videos like that where they're trying to get a lot of that in there. And I just don't know, I still have sites on Elementor and I'm just like, it's just a different experience. You know what I mean? There's a lot going on there.
It seems like Elementor is almost, from my perspective and what I see, often for DIYers or DIY web designers, like business owners who do websites a little bit. Like they're just, for example, Wes McDowell, who's an Elementor guy. He is
incredible. I've looked into his stuff.
Yeah, he's great. But he is specifically for DIY business owners who they don't really have a huge budget to pay an agency, but they know they shouldn't build their own website. So he guides them through on how to use Elementor to be able to do it themselves. So it's almost like the DIY WordPress solution, I feel like, from what I've seen. At least a lot of users that I know seem to be much less curious development minded, and they're much more like design, just give me the basics and that's fine.
Yeah. There's definitely, I would say, because it's so mature and there is a lot of like easy, like drag and drop, like it's pretty friendly in there. I never really like encouraged clients to go into the Elementor realm and play around with stuff. But a lot of times that I had, even now, like I'll set up like more of like an advanced custom fields or like a jet engine, like custom post type situation where they can like edit certain things, but like the layouts and everything like that are behind in the page builder. So like that, we set it up and then they just like add a blog post and it just shows up magically to them. Right. Or they add a job listing and same thing. But yeah, I mean, I've seen Wes McDowell, like I've watched some of his videos, like, and that is an amazing, like a business model. And it's amazing, like case study to see like, oh, well, people can actually use this tool. Like there's a lot of really good value there. And I would just say that I feel like most of the time, those DIY business owners are running their business and DIYing a website. So they're probably going to just it's great for them if it works, because they're just going to get like the website that they need, and then they're going to go back to running their business, maybe tinker with it here and there. But when you have like an agency mindset, or you're building websites for somebody, depending on how big those clients get, you may need to do more things. You may need to do more dynamic things, or you may need to do more custom things. And obviously, it's literally the biggest problem we have in WordPress is every time somebody's talking, they're talking from their specific perspective, and there's just not enough time, or it would get really annoying if they would preface their whole life story before they talk and their experience. Because I've picked up on this so many times. It's like, I know to think about it like this now, but anytime you say, oh, you should use Elements for everything, or you should use Bricks for everything, or you shouldn't let your clients in their website, or you shouldn't whatever. There is too many variables to make blanket statements like that, because there's mom and pop segment of clients. There's DIYers. There's mid-market businesses that like are going to have a marketing team that they don't want you to, they don't like, maybe they'll pay you for certain things or whatever, but they probably, I know big agencies, they like deploy the thing onto like servers that the big company owns, and they just needed them to build out the website and do all that sort of stuff. But they have a full marketing team. Like they don't even need you after they build it. And then there's some people that do that for small businesses too. It's just like everything needs to be like, there's just too many nuances, which is great because it leaves for a lot of discussion, a lot of really interesting stuff that I personally love talking about. But in that search for like a one way to do it, there is none. Like there's no one way. There's too many options.
DIY is so interesting right now, because I feel like for years, Wix was the typical DIY solution. SquareSpace to an extent, but it was mostly Wix that a business owner looking for a quick website would more than likely go to, unless it was a GoDaddy builder or something. Some WordPress, like Divi for a while, was a pretty popular DIY. It was in that market, but Wix is interesting now because Wix has moved from the DIY solution to the agency solution with WixStudio. Like they're really, really pushing WixStudio. I've actually heard really good things from folks who have kind of dipped their toes into that world. But it is interesting. I wanted to bring that up because I'm curious from your perspective, like where would a DIYer go now? If Wix is more agency route now with WixStudio, like where do the DIYers go?
I'm not going to lie. I haven't like looked at WixStudio specifically. I've played in Wix before because I've had like, friends, basically clients or whatever that like, oh, we started in Wix. And I'm like, I get in there. They're like, can you help us? I get in there. I'm like, you know what? I'd rather just rebuild this in WordPress. Yeah. So that's the thing is like, I feel like if I was going to tell somebody, my conscience tells me that if knowing everything that I know, if a DIYer wanted to build something, I would like potentially send them to like WordPress.com. So they're at least in the realm. Obviously WordPress.com is way different than org, but like at least they're like in like kind of a siloed environment that is WordPress that they could move if they scale. The trouble is, truthfully, and it's hard to predict this, and it's hard to be really honest with yourself. Is what you're doing, like, do you think it's going to scale into something that WordPress is only going to be the contender for, or like a custom solution or something like that? Like, because if the answer is no, then like I would still argue you want to have your data, you'd want to have control of all your stuff, you'd want to be in an open source environment. But I'm telling you, man, like the funny part about this is like this is where it goes back to the people that have been in here for a long time. I feel like there is a very real situation going on right now where like people are just very, very comfortable and have just seemingly gone with the flow of like not caring about their data, not caring about like literally like look at our phones and everything like that, like Apple, Google, like it's very like everything is on like a cloud storage drive. Everything is like in the cloud, so to speak, that you don't have access to. I'm guilty of this. I'm just saying like this is different than how it was before and the idea of WordPress. And so it's like the open source nature where you can see all those types of things is really, really important to the people in the WordPress community who have been here for a long time. But then you tell somebody in the WebFlow community or getting into WebFlow and they're like, nah, man, I just want to pay these guys $70 a month, man. That's that's like, it's just way more convenient for me. I don't have to worry about hosting. I don't have to worry about anything else. The caveat to that is like, then you see people that are getting these big, huge $15,000 bills or whatever when they do scale up. So I don't know. I don't come here like having answers, like specifically, you know what I mean? I'm just like, I'm going through all these progressions in my mind and I'm not sure where to go back to it. I'm not sure where I would send a DIYer exactly. Like, it really depends on the level of skill, I guess. I mean, I guess they could still use like a Wix without WixStudio. I think they probably try to steer them in that direction now, but I don't know what that actually entails. Plus, the last point on that is like there's cost concerns too, because like there's some like free ones out there that people just get, you know, literally directed to. I don't know, like a card, or I'm not sure what Framer costs, but there's just so many. There's so many ways to build a website now. It's actually unbelievable. I
think a lot of DIYers end up gravitating towards a web designer with a productized template or service. Like I have a few that come to mind in my Community Web Designer Pro who serve very, very niche markets of like customer demographic. And they just have like the template for that type of person, and they can change out colors, imagery, a little bit of copy and stuff like, but they really help the business owner focus on the business. And then here's the website, at least if it's more productized, and they could go custom if they wanted to, which, as you've rightly said multiple times here, inevitably all roads are going to lead to WordPress if you really want to get into absolute control of everything. So we are in interesting times, man. Mark, this has been fun, dude. It's been really cool kind of hearing your perspective on some of this stuff based off of our chat with WordPress. I agree. I think WordPress is in a tricky spot in some ways, but the good news for WordPress, I think I said this on that chat too, is like, whether it's Bricks, Divi, Elementor, Breakdance, whatever, Block Builder, GeneratePress, whatever, all these different tribes of WordPress, the foundation is WordPress. So as long as they do their due diligence to make sure all of these little pockets of communities excel, then awesome. Like you said earlier, as long as WordPress itself as the core gets better, that's all we want. So that's my closing thought. Do you have any closing thoughts on that?
I'm definitely bullish on WordPress. I mean, I do think that it's still, I want it to continue to succeed. I don't plan on going anywhere. Like I said, I think this is my end game in that regard. I just want us to continue to have, I would love us just continue to have open and honest conversations about like what we're seeing critique wise or, you know, positive or negative, like whatever. And then also just always be moving forward and kind of, I don't know, like treating it as more of a, like understanding that it does impact a lot of people. And like and give the respect that's due to all of the people that are in there, you know, whether they're DIY or because I know there's a lot, or whether there's agency owners that are dealing with a lot of different websites on the platform. I would just love to continue to see it continue to grow. And I am, like I said, I'm very bullish on it, man. So this has been fantastic, Josh. I cannot thank you enough for having this, inviting me to this conversation. I've had a lot of fun here.
Heck yeah, dude. Round one for sure with you. We're going to have a lot to talk about over the next few years here. Where should everyone go to connect with you, to check you out, man?
For sure. Yeah. If you just type in mjs.bio, it's kind of like a little landing page. It's got all my social links on there, other stuff that I got going on. You can subscribe to the mailing list. Lots more to come. So
we'll make sure that's linked in the show notes. Your YouTube channel is starting to buzz, man. So keep it up, dude. Hey, listen, I'm the elder in this YouTube freelancer influencer world now. So I just want to tell you, keep it up. You're up to some really cool stuff. What you said earlier is like the best advice I could give, which is just be you. Like, be curious, experiment. It's going to be very, very obvious and clear what you're interested in and what type of work you enjoy doing. So as long as you continue to just be completely real and honest, you're going to continue to see this thing blow up, dude. So I'm pumped for you, Mark. Really excited to see what you're up to, man. And I know this is just the start.
Appreciate it, Josh. Can't thank you enough, man.
Cheers, dude. Talk soon. All right, friends. Again, young or old, I hope you enjoyed this one and took away some takeaways from this. If you're already started, again, you may see this from a different lens, but if you are just getting started and you kind of wondered what is right for you, I really hope this helped give you some concrete ideas on what to move forward with, what to expect, but most importantly, to keep your tool stack lean and mean, and even more importantly, to use the tools that work for you. There really is no right or wrong tool. So I hope this has helped. I would love to hear your thoughts and takeaways from this one. I know Mark would as well. Go to the show notes for this episode at joshhall.co/349. And again, Mark has a growing YouTube channel and is very active on all of the socials. So all of his links will be over at the show notes at joshhall.co/349. Thank you for joining. Make sure you're subscribed. A lot of good ones coming along the road here. So get ready because we're going to have a very, very fun fall and early winter on the Web Design Business Podcast. I'm pumped to have you along for the ride. So thank you, friends. Whether you're a WordPresser, a framer, a SquareSpacer, a ShowIter, a WebStudioer, a WebFlower, a Duda-er, I don't care. The Web Design Business Podcast is for you. Cheers.